Good afternoon, everyone. Mary Sloan here with another episode of Inspirational Influencer News. People making a difference. I'll try that again. People making a difference. And my guest this afternoon is certainly someone who is making a difference. I've known Lesley for some time now, and I know that she is truly committed to animals and people. And so she is the creator and CEO of Intuitive Animal Healing and is a certified core communication coach for businesses and people in business. She is host of Books, Yarns, and Tales on Win-Win Women TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. So she's a star out there in the universe. Her gift and her passions have allowed her to help people and pets access their innate healing abilities to get to the root of their imbalances and restore themselves to optimal health naturally and holistically. She guides others through insight and wisdom as an intuitive shamanic healing practitioner, end-of-life coach, and psychic medium. Lesley expanded her offerings when she became certified as a core communication coach for entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs hire Lesley to get to the core of communication because most fail to speak the language of their listener and are missing out on connections, relationships, and resolutions for maximized success. She helps break down communication barriers to leverage conversations for collaborations and conversations. And when she's not working or walking or hiking, then she's with her dogs outside or with her cat curled up with a book inside. So Lesley, tell us and tell our listeners what it is, the one thing you really want them to know that they should take away from this interview.
Wow. First of all, Mary, thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate that. And I love that image of, a star out in the universe. That sounds like I'm shining brightly, which I love to think of. I think the one thing, that leads me to that I would love listeners to know is that they are their own stars. You have your own inner wisdom and your own guidance to shine brightly in whatever it is that you specialize. And that I love that aspect of it. And that's kind of why I've been in communication for over 30 years, because I love being able to help people find who they really are and how they can then converse with others to really put their gifts out there.
That's awesome. And so I know that you've taken on this new core. Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell our listeners exactly what that means.
Sure. I was certified in core communication, which is the brainchild of Jane M. Powers. And it kind of fell in place with me because of a lot of things Jane was saying. I'm like, I already do that. I already believe in that. And yet the word core it's what do you call it? An anagram. So it stands for, C is for catalyst, O means optimizer, R is relator, and E is expert. So in this process, all four of those types are at the center of all of us. I offer a little assessment that people can go through and they can discover, are you more of a catalyst in your world? Or maybe you're more of a relator, or maybe you're the expert or the optimizer. So that's a place in which to start to understand who you are. Let me give you a quick example of each of those so you can understand that a little better. The C for catalyst are those people who have ideas and they just kind of go with them. There's nothing going to stop them. They're kind of like the movers and shakers. They're into sports and they just want to move forward. the not good with having slow down, wait a minute, let's think about this. They got it, they want to go forward. O for optimizers are those people who love systems. They want to make sure that they've got like all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, but they have systems in place in which their world works well and their teaching works really well. And then the R, the relators. The relators are those open-hearted people who really care about others. They care about humanity. And if it's a good cause, they're there for it. They're more likely to ask you, how are you doing today? Are you okay? Versus telling you all about who they are. And they're the relators. And so the E is that expert. You know, those people who will say to you, how do you know that? Can you prove that? Where are the statistics on that? I want to see the numbers. They are the people who really, you know, when they've got a subject that they love, they're going to dive deep. And when they dive deep, they're going to read everything they can. And it's like a puzzle that they're going to put together all these pieces on. So that basis of where core is gives everybody kind of like a platform in which to go, okay, now I'm starting to understand myself a little bit more. And from there, we go even deeper in that, in the part that, how do you talk to other people? It's a lot of times in my work with pets and people, you know, it's about people not knowing what their pet needs. It's their pet usually can't speak, so they feel like they need someone to interpret what's going on. But people often don't speak the language that they really want to either. They are stymied. They want to get ahead, and yet they're not really sure what the words are to say. That's kind of like the first step that we do is to, number one, you've got to know yourself. And then number two in that whole system is know others. So once you understand yourself and the core codes and what their attributes are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, then you can apply this either in business or in relationships or in just in life, it's general, that you can then go, oh, okay, I understand where that person's coming from. So if I can understand where that person is coming from and how they're speaking, then I can understand how I might relate to them. How do I carry on a collaboration with this person? How do I connect with them on a deeper level? And that's knowing them and the language of what to say to them in any given situation. And then the last step of that is truly that whole part about knowing what to say, but being able to put it together in a very succinct way, that it flows easily, it becomes part of a natural flow of who you are and getting down to basics. And it filters through so many different avenues.
You know, that's really interesting. And I think we all innately know that we kind of fit into one or of those. Mm-hmm. But my question is, and I did a fair amount of study in communication with Landmark Education. And one of the things that we really got was listening for other people and knowing from your listening more about who they were and how they wanted to be communicated with. Right. As a result, is that also a big part of core?
Oh, absolutely. I always teach, you know, and again, when I teach, whether it's the core communication when it comes to business people, or even when it comes to intuitive learning for people, listening and being aware is what I call it, an awareness. If you are aware of your surrounding, then you start to tune in and use more of your five senses, but even your intuition in that. So the awareness part is in part of listening. What is someone saying? Too often people are ready to go, I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking before they even finish the sentence. But if you listen to what somebody has to say to you, then you have more of a solid footing to knowing how to direct what you have to say. So that's part of the awareness, but it's not just our ears that we're listening with. Sometimes it's our eyes that we're listening with as well, because we're seeing, is that person sitting up straight? Maybe that person's hunched over. Maybe they're looking bored. Maybe they're sad. Maybe they're really excited and very happy about what you're saying. And that's part of that actively being aware of your surroundings. Because when you're aware of that, again, you may have more insight and you would probably have more of an intuitive hit that goes, oh my gosh, this is the perfect person. I could talk to this person about XYZ. So yes, listening is a big part of that, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's always so interesting in conversation and to watch conversation, because you're right. Most people have no idea what actually is being said. All they're looking for is their chance to jump in and say whatever they have to say. So sometimes you watch conversations around you and it's like two clocks but on different time frames, and they're sort of facing one another, but it's like, no, there's no communication going on here.
Not at all. And if there's not any communication, then there isn't a relationship either. There is no way that you're going to be able to connect with that person in a relationship. And this is really, some of that jumping in is, I would think, is an old style way of doing business, because you gotta get the sale. You gotta get that person on board. You've got to whatever it is, and you're pushing your agenda. But when you're more laid back and open, like the conversation that we're having, and it's more at ease, you start to build a rapport, a relationship with this person. When you build that relationship, you are building a foundation that's going to last for more than one shot. It could be a referral to someone else. It could be a recommendation. It could be a number of things. Even if they don't do business with you, they get a better feel for who you are and how you're coming across. You always, even though you're learning the core codes, you want to be authentic in what you have to say to someone. And that's really important as well.
It's interesting what you say about authenticity, because I've found, and this is just my personal experience, and it could be different for other people, that people are almost afraid to be authentic, that they're almost afraid of being found out for who they really are, that somehow or other, in the coaching world, of course, a big part of this is the imposter syndrome, where people are terrified that somehow or other, even though they're absolutely capable, amazing, wonderful people and have been doing great work for years, there's still this crazy little voice in their head that says, nope, you're not the one, you're not. Yeah. and it's so crazy that we can't even accept ourselves enough to be authentic and say, no, I'm okay. I really am okay. And yeah, I really can do this.
I think you're right on there, Mary. And there's a couple of things that are important there for listeners to understand. Yes, we have labeled it as the imposter syndrome. And I think part of it is perfectionist. With women, and most generally women, are that having to be perfect. We've been shown for years all these ads that show the perfect skin, the perfect weight, the perfect hair, the perfect clothes, the perfect teeth, the perfect whatever out there. And it's an image that women sometimes think they have to achieve. And men, on the other hand, are shown the successful businessman, the rich, the famous, and it's another standard that they believe that in order to be successful, you have to climb that ladder to get to whatever it is. You got to keep up with the Joneses. And yet, what happens is that if you don't stop and correct some of that mindset or that thinking and change your thinking about how you view yourself, how do you stand within your own power, then at one point or the other, you're going to find yourself, and this is where we're seeing it in these days, people who have high blood pressure or diabetes or chronic pain. It's part of that whole, I gotta get, and their whole body reacts to it. And over time, that plays havoc on all of us. And so if you can feel good about who you are and where you're coming from, then you can step out even if you're feeling afraid, because feeling afraid is kind of like that shot of adrenaline that's going to be like, yeah, I can do this. I can stand up and I can be me and who I truly am in this world. And that's really important for all of us to find that inner guidance and that inner knowing and not take, the outside world's word for it, because you all have that gift. You all have that ability within you.
That's a wonderful thought. What it brought up for me was these people that want to go on launches to other parts of the universe or even up in space, and
Mm-hmm.
now we have all these rich people who are willing to take you on virtual space trips. I've often wondered if sitting in a rocket ship poised straight up, it's like, no, I'm scared, I want to go back. Does that ever cross their mind? I think it might cross mine.
Yeah. I think that's, look at some of the people who've been extremely talented. Any actress or actor, and we even put newscasters out there as being very talented people, and they are like in a rocket ship. I mean, we've got somebody who sings extremely well, and they're noticed by something. It is like a rocket ship. You're pointed straight up, and you just keep going up and up and up, and you have all that fear of, oh my gosh, do I want to go this fast? Do I want to go this far? Do I want to be this big? And at some point, you either find your own inner guidance, or you say, I've got enough stability around me with people in my environment who help keep me grounded and not way up into space, or you kind of explode like a nova or something. And when that happens, then people have a hard time. They have a hard time with the fastness of something, because it's like, I've got lottery winner, you got money too quick, you don't know what to do with it. Somebody who's an instant star, you got all the stardom, but you're still trying to make sure you look that perfect part. And then when it's not there, there's that emptiness. The only place we can fill is ourselves inside. So maybe you don't want to get on the rocket ship, or maybe you do. But before you do, know who you are inside.
Yeah, and be okay. I mean, I think most of us just have a hard time being okay with who we are. That this crazy imposter syndrome that somehow or other we're supposed to be more than who we are or different than who we are. It's
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm fine, but why is it that this is so hard?
I think lots of times it's because we don't feel safe in who we are. You know, you don't feel safe talking about who you are. You don't feel safe putting out your ideas sometimes. It's much easier to follow along with what everybody else is doing or what they expect you to do. And what happens to many, you know, as a child, when you first go to school, you're so enthusiastic and everything is great. And then as you continue on school, it's one of these, you got to sit down, you got to follow the rules, you got to learn this, you got to give it back. And so some of that creativity and that just spontaneity, it can be hampered. And I think this is sometimes why we see a lot of children with who we say are ADD, because they've just got so much energy that they're not meant to be sitting there. So then you get to adulthood and you're told that you've got to grow up and you've got to get a job and you've got to do this and you've got to make money, you've got to support yourself. And so they don't always think, and a perfect example is my own daughter, who, when she decided that she was going to do art school, she had had another whole different idea in life, that she knew her path for a couple of years of student, junior and senior. And we looked at colleges that were going to go along that line. And then she went, no, I really want to go to art school. And immediately her grandmother went, what are you going to do? Are you going to teach? How are you going to make money with that? You know, and her grandmother just didn't have any idea, well-meaningly as she was, she didn't have any idea that my daughter was going to create art because it was a passion for her. And that's what she loved. And that's what fed her soul. And even to today, it feeds her soul. She's a metal sculptor and she loves what she's doing and has quite the following in it. And she would have been unhappy the other way. And so I think sometimes people get down a path that isn't quite who they are, and they unconsciously, we do the habits in our life and what we learn from an early age, and we do those habits over and over again. You know, you get out of bed on the same side, you put your legs in your pants the same way, you brush your teeth the same way. Well, what would happen if you got up on the other side of the bed, if you started with a different leg, if you brushed your teeth with a different hand, if you thought a different way, if you stopped yourself from some of those habits and those thinking, just like the imposter syndrome? What happens if you start to say, oh, you're no good, you're not going to be able to do this, and go, wait a minute, that's an old pattern. I am very good at what I do. I know that I'm good inside, and I can share that gift with other people. I may not be the best, I may not be that billionaire, but I am really good. And I'm going to walk that walk and talk that talk. And you have to repeat it to yourself over and over again, because a path in the woods isn't made in one day. It's made by going over and over again. The neurons in our brain, you have to rewire and refire those neurons to be able to say to yourself, yeah, I really am good. You know, I know what I'm talking about. People gravitate towards me, not necessarily because of what you do, but it's who you are, and they want to know more.
And that's so true. And I think the thing that really is hard, and it's great what you're doing in the sense that, you know, you help people see their natural gifts, their way they are naturally wired to be, and then help them to be successful in that way. Instead of, you know, a lot of the world says, oh, but to do X, you have to be like this or that, and there's so many colors of whatever it is that you do, whether you do art or whether you do school teaching or whether you do coaching or whether, you know, it doesn't matter what you do. There's still so many ways that you can do it brilliantly, and you can be that brilliant person. If you just understand that you will be more brilliant if you're you as opposed to trying to be someone else, because it's very hard to keep trying to be someone else.
It is. It absolutely is. And that's all about communication. Right from the very beginning, what you communicate to yourself and what are you telling your body, your spirit, your mind, your emotions, how are you dealing with that? That reflects outward to everything and everybody. It reflects when you're in business. It reflects, quite often when I worked with the pet people, it was more about the person sometimes. I had entrepreneurs who were busy at work and they had things going on and they were so stressed and so overwhelmed. They would come home and they would just come in that same energy in their household as they did in their business. And go, well, wait a minute, what's going on? This isn't my person. And until they decompressed and knew how to kind of say, okay, I got to let go of that, then the pet and the relationship would change. But that's the same with your workers. If you don't know how to communicate, and if you don't feel good about who you are as a boss, then communicating to people that your employees is harder, and they may not get your vision and your passion. And you want them to be as happy in your success as you are, because that grows your business. That makes you successful. They're happy to go out and say, wow, I really believe in this company and I really, put my best foot forward in this because it's going somewhere.
Well, and as you think about creating a business and you want to bring in people and to know who they are, what's their natural way of being, as opposed to something imposed from above. It's sort of like round pegs and square holes. It doesn't work very well. And so I'm sure that for a lot of people who have other people working for them and with them, to be able to use these principles that you've outlined at core, where they could get a handle on who these people are naturally, so that they become more able to be all they were meant to be.
Absolutely. It's like you and I were talking just before the show, about branding, and that you have a passion for that, and that there is no name branding. You really have to know what it is that you do. And it's like going deeper and deeper until you get those layers down and understand that, because that's, again, part of communication. And sometimes people need help with that. And so they would come to somebody like you. They need help with that. They need help in putting themselves out in the world. How do they market that? So that's huge. And I just want to make sure that people know that on Books, Yarns, and Tales, my TV show on Win-Win Women, I have September, let me look at the date here, 16th. Mary is going to come be a guest on my show. And then you get the inside story about Mary and what inspired her to do the work that she does in the world. And I think that's really important.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to that. That will be a different event too. And, it's sort of like you put yourself out into the world and all of a sudden the world goes, oh, yes, I love her. Oh, let's give her this opportunity and that opportunity. And the world just comes at you. Oh, just a minute, hang on here. Or you can just kind of go, okay, let's try that. Okay, let's try that. I mean, it's like starting this show. I mean, who knows? But it's been a blast. I've absolutely loved it. And I've loved the opportunity to get to know people like you and to put out into the world people making a difference, because there are some wonderful, wonderful people in this world. And let's not be the no-name brand,
Right.
Keep it a secret. Let's tell the world, that's why it's the news, because people pay attention to the news every day. Well, let's give them some good news to play. So we are sadly running out of time. And as I mentioned, I have to skip away a little bit early because I have to go back to my dentist and get my tooth put back together. Oh, these joys. But
Things happen.
Lesley, how is it that people can contact you to get more information about CORE and what you do, or even maybe more in touch with what you do for their animals?
Well, I think the easiest way to get a hold of me is Lesley, Lesley, at lesleynace.net. No, that's a .com, sorry. So Lesley at lesleynace.com. That's the email address that you can hit and use. And the other one's a longer one, but it's Lesley at intuitiveanimalhealing.net. So either way, if you're listening, you can reach out to me there or in LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you're finding these, just give me a Google and yeah, we'll chat. I would love to chat more.
It's easy because, of course, we can see your name here.
Yeah.
So Lesley Nace, it's Lesley at lesleynace.com. So no reason to get confused there. Just take a look at her name. And,
that's right. And if you want something with the animal, just ask me there and I'll help you there as well.
Exactly. Anyway, thanks so much, Lesley. And
thank you.
I look forward to being on your show. And just keep being the core person you are in your universe.
Thank you, Mary.